Today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the town I grew up in. So when I was about 4 years old, my family moved to a little town called Stenning. And as soon as you get to Stenning, you see really old buildings everywhere. The signs that tell you that you've just arrived in the town of Stenning have a little picture on them of a man called St Cuthman. And when you go to school in Stenning, then they teach you all about this character, who was an Anglo-Saxon. Warrior tribes from Germany and Denmark that came over to the British Isles in about the 5th century. They displaced the Celtic tribes, the ancient Britons who moved over into Wales, up into Scotland and down into Cornwall, which is why you have Cornish, Welsh and Scottish are ancient Celtic languages, but the English language that I'm speaking to you in now is mostly based on German roots. Old English is a language which you and I wouldn't recognise as English. We wouldn't understand it because it's actually much closer to German than it is to modern English. And their language was written with runes, as well as having phonetic value, had lots of associations with them. So this one, as well as having a sound, would represent ash trees, knowledge and poetry. So magical meaning associated with it, and the Anglo-Saxons would use the runes to tell the future, much like the I Ching might have been used in East Asia. So powerful magical symbols associated with their language, and these are said to have come from the god Woden, and the Vikings called him Odin. And so these people, they worshipped many different gods. They worshipped Odin, Thor, Freya, and that's why today we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Woden's Day, Thor's Day and Freya's Day. So in our language that we use every day, we can see the history. If you grow up in England, you look around and you see castles like the one just down the road from where I am now, Oakhampton Castle. Back to the story of Stenning. This man, St Cuthman, comes from somewhere to the west of Stenning, we don't know where exactly, and he carries his decrepit old mother in a wheelbarrow. We're told he's a shepherd. His name's Cuthman, which means kinsman, so a relative, or in this case an ancestor, and of course he himself is a Christian. That's why he becomes famous. And he comes and he has magical battles with the pagan inhabitants, and he sends people flying into the sky and shooting down into the earth, and he generally comes and causes a bit of trouble basically. And one of the things that he does, which is a very famous story if you grow up in Stenning, is he takes the ancient rune stone, very magical object. The Saxon pagans is said to be so sacred that if you touched it you would die. And he came along, and not only did he touch it, but he kicked it over and he sat on it. And there's a statue of St Cuthman sitting like this on the old rune stone, looking at a church which he built and which now contains that ancient stone. So you can still see this stone that's more than 1500 years old. In another story, the devil is trying to cut through the hills to allow the sea to rush in and flood the people of Stenning, drowning them all. And Cuthman, he goes and he tricks the devil and he stops his work. He's working by night because Satan is a creature of the night. So he gets a lantern and he sneaks up on him, and then he kicks over a cockerel and makes it crow so that Satan thinks that the morning has come, and he abandons his work halfway through And that's a story to explain why we have these valleys that go through the hills but don't quite get to the sea. The very landscape is full of stories in the same way that our language is full of stories. These stories situate the English as coming from the Saxons, but not the same as the German Saxons. Continuous but discontinuous, and most importantly it situates the English as people of the book, not just Christians but people that use the Latin alphabet. All history is stories about place and about people, and it's stories that people tell to bind themselves, to tie themselves to a particular place. You can hear the stories in what they're saying. People are telling about who they are and where they're from. Okay, thanks for listening.